Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I am your Loremaster, here today for another God video. In this month where we piece together the rebellious tendencies of various nations and people of the Inner Sea region, we have a goddess which fits the theme. And what do you know? She just happens to be my favorite Pathfinder deity. Almost like I planned this month just to talk about her around my birthday. Anyway, let's talk about Milani, deity of devotion, hope, and uprisings. But before the rebellion begins, we need to set everything up. So where can you find the information yourself? First, as always, the path to rebellion starts in Gods and Magic, for both 1e and 2e. Before plans were first set in the second book of the Reign of Winter Adventure Path, titled The Shackled Hut, then spread far and wide in the book Inner Sea Faiths. For backup information, you'll find Face of Purity never disappoints. But also, side tangent-wise, brings information from far and wide. The books Champions of Purity, Paths of the Righteous, and Heroes of the Street. Finally, location is important, so planar adventures should always be considered. Milani was once a half-elf born to a group of forlorn elves. She grew up hearing about elven greatness and how they would restore order to the world, only to see them time and again do nothing when evil reared its head. And so she decided to do something. She hunted evil, and hunted well. She caught the eye of one Eredin, who blessed her as his champion. She spent her life standing up when no one else did, protecting the common man against monsters, raiders, and oppressive noblemen. Eventually, her hair turned gray, her limbs grew weak. Then, on one final attack on Terre de Diablists, her heart stopped. However, this was not the end, as Eredin raised her to be one of his many saints, if but a minor one, inspiring people to stand and fight for themselves. That was until the day Eredin died. Everyone was caught unaware, and many of the saints were struck down by an attack of fiends who took the opportunity to strike. However, Milani is always prepared, and did what she always did. The things that needed doing. When the dust settled, Iomade was the inheritor, with 99% of Eredin's old authority. Milani was the other 1%. Milani still appears as she did in life, as a half-elf. Her youth restored to her, and her hair changed from the white it last was to sequined silver. Oh, and swan wings, she did not have those before. She was a ranger in life, and she still wears her homemade leather and wood armor. And of course, she is always armed with a morning star and buckler. In art, she is almost always depicted in 3 ways: breaking chains, slaying fiends, or leading the weak to take down their oppressors. So what is there to say about Milani? Well, she is a new deity. And unlike Iomade, who inherited a whole church, Milani started from basically scratch. This is actually beneficial, since her faith is currently at the size where Milani can still pretty much cater to her followers personally. In life, she was a ranger, and now as goddess of uprising, she still specializes in battle plans which assume her allies are outnumbered and outclassed. So she teaches her faith to use whatever weapons they can scrounge, from the actual to the metaphysical. As for devotion and hope, well, she believes people work best together, and works to not be some towering god, but an actual leader to her people, leading them from the front to give others the courage to follow behind her, and making sure that they have all the resources they need to do so beforehand. If anyone is surprised Milani is anti-slavery, you probably aren't paying attention. All forms of slavery are against her ideals, which places her faith in conflict with several different countries, as if it wasn't already. So, who is it that follows the goddess on her missions of uprising? Well, first of all, she gives a home to those who are half-human. Well, considering the changes made with 2E, I should specify half-elves and half-orcs. They see themselves in Milani, and use her as an inspirational link to both the human side and the grander part of what they can play in the world, as opposed to just being outsiders. Outside of that, most are either commoners or some sort of specialized crafters who just wanted to live a normal life. However, they are aware that sometimes to ensure a normal life, people need to be willing to stand up for what is right, even tearing down their lives. Milani encourages marriage. Faithful marriage. Betrayals of all kind are against her faith, so keep your eyes to yourself. She also likes children, and therefore is against child soldiers, or having them exposed in general to the horrors of war. Which brings us to our first side tangent, the part of the show where hope blooms eternal. This week, we have Rose Wardens. These are specialized followers of Milani, who work to foment dissent and organize the downtrodden against overbearing tyrants. They walk in the dark, their faces hidden by hoods, working to bring freedom as painlessly to citizens as possible. They do this by learning techniques to empower their weapons, make the city itself their allies, ignore anything that stands in their way, and, like their deity, rally the people to stand for themselves. The duty of a priest of Milani changes with the times. If they live in times of peace, they divide the times between being priests and being common members of the community. They help promote individual freedoms, working to promote community as a whole so that the whole is strong. They work to plan for the future, both for natural disasters and for human matters. In times of war and revolt, they work as strategists, spies, and scouts, doing what they can to lead like the goddess does. Not because they think that they deserve power, but because they know that people united can do great things. They know when it is the time to talk, the time to fight, and the time to die. And will never compromise with the enemy, because appeasement never ends. The priest's formal wear tends to be white tabards with a rose in the center, usually bearing a decoration for each community member who died for Netta. The clergy organizes themselves like cults, being small independent cells with no leader, and which can survive if others are defeated. And when it comes to defeat, the faith believes that Milani allows martyrs of the church to reincarnate so that they can fight again. And many proclaim proudly about being the reincarnation of some old hero. Milani's temples are buildings on inclines for two reasons. One, that parishioners need to go up here when leaving, but always do so together. Second, there is space to hide a variety of weapons, and in times of danger, freedom fighters. They also tend to have rose gardens with them. In small communities, temples also double as town halls with the altar put out of the way when it's not needed. Shrines themselves come in two forms. In places where the faith is most needed, and therefore suppressed, these shrines can be stones with hidden rose carvings on the bottoms, or small hidden rose bushes. There are also Milani shrines found in Iomade temples, where an alcove is devoted to Iomede's sister saint. Which brings us to our second side tangent, urban acolytes. You see, I've the godly opinions, Milani is the most related to the urban environments. Therefore, it's probably my one chance to talk about these subdomains. I haven't given you the apocryphal of different deities, but this is a group of special subdomains found in the book Heroes of the Street, which show how faith is different in urban environments. After all, one is preaching to a different crowd, and it's not like most deities who have these subdomains would disagree with these readings of their faith. So let's go through them all one by one. Starting off, the more urbanized an area is, the better chance for one to test their strength through competitions. There is also less warfare, at the medieval-ish times, for city dwellers to worry about, so dueling and other forms of combat were learned as hobby forms. But they still had to worry about wars with outsiders, which is why when cities get large enough, they start to develop fortifications. But cities are also places of learning. When enough people seeking community and knowledge come together, institutions of education can form. When laws and writings like runes come together, actual legislation can be done. Those who out in the country were just simple artificers find themselves able to start industries with all the potential workers given to them. But on the more dangerous side, all the people together can be tempting for seekers of knowledge to trickily gain it through the use of espionage, not possible in smaller towns. The concentration of people together allows those who worship death and evil to start devastating plagues. And if you do not learn to respect the tens of thousands of people within the city walls, you're not just looking at simple chaos, but full-on riots. Milani has two divine realms. One is Milani's Garden, a small realm outside of Elysium's field of battle. The hedge maze of rose bushes serves as an impenetrable fortress that is impossible for anyone who Milani does not want it to be navigated by. This is the place where Milani comes to rest, between uprisings and visiting other heroes. The other is, ironically, in Axis. The refuge of the Red Rose, is part of Eridan's old realm, taken over and rebuilt when she rose to divinity. From here, she fights against inequalities and biases of Axis, coming as a counterpoint to the First Order of the Plane. Now it's time for other interesting facts. Where is worship of Milani strongest? Where she is most needed, and therefore places where tyranny and fear rule. Cheliax and Isgar, Goth and Irisen, Rahadom. Though there are two notable places where she is worshipped for helping with their revolutions, Vidrian and Rovenel, the two nations which are known for the foundation of the Firebrands. Milani has no holidays to herself, but has adopted holidays of successful revolutions. Armistice, Even Tongue Day, Donation Day, and Liberty Day. But not All Kings Day. Golf kind of sucks. Finally, her holy text is a book called The Light of Hope. The book is divided into two parts. The first half details the tales of Milani when she was alive. The latter half gives advice on family, defense, and hope. It is customary to use pressed roses as a bookmark, and when given as a gift, to mark pages of note with rose petals. Which brings us to our third side tangent. We have talked about some personal codes before, but the one e-book Champions of Purity gives special oaths called Heavenly Virtues. These are creeds attached to 6 different virtues, which I'd like to note are different from the heavenly virtues in real-life approximation, but I digress today. Why is this in the Milani video? Because one of them is freedom. which focuses on breaking anything holding anyone down, real or metaphysically. The 5 others, in no particular order, are courage, never flee when others are in danger; protection, which is always defending those who are weak; humility, which is putting the needs of others before yourself; mercy, which is not killing opponents; and purity, which avoids coming into contact with evil directly. In general, all generic, look, I'm a good guy generics, but someone might get inspired for something similar at your table. Never can tell. Now let's go over Milani's allies, which is going to be shorter than usual because instead of larger-than-life creatures who have a wide range of forms, we have a few rangers who were raised from mortality. First we have Charl, a master of both knives and short bow, and is always willing to help mortals. We have Dalam, the Lucky, a young woman who is massive stealth and passes on her skills to mortals. We have Nyla, who is Milani's canine companion in life, and now is a hound archon who prefers her white retriever form. I can't blame her. And finally we have a herald, Courage Heart, who was another mortal ranger of Milani. She helped with the early stages of the Red Revolution, but until it went out of control and she tried to push back, which cost her soul. Milani managed to free her from the final blade and make her the herald she is today. But Courage Heart still goes by her assumed name because it has only been 50-ish years since she died, and she still has family too close to the final blades for comfort. Moving on to Alliances of Gods, she gets along well with Kid and Kaelin as a fellow figure of freedom, though she gets along better with his herald. Aristel and Turog as fellow protectors of community, Desna as fellow protector of hope, and Aomade as sister saint of Eridan. She also gets along well with Kurgis, with rumors saying there is something more to that. Her relationship with Sunray is mixed, to say the least, since the Sun Lady's faith allows for slavery. She works to avoid drawing attention from evil deities, but is more than willing to work to undermine Asmodeus and Zon-Kuthon whenever possible. Which brings us to our final side tangent. We talked about the elven deities in the past, but let's take the time to talk about these deities which do not acknowledge Milani as one of their own, or at least 2 of them. All others can be their own videos with information we currently have on them. So, Findeldala and Yolwal. Findeldala, which I'm not going to even come close to pronouncing right tonight. Findeldala is a preserver of elven culture. She does this through old works of art and architecture. She hates innovation, which often puts her in conflict with Shaylin and her followers. Finally, her followers are known to carve their own walking sticks, decorated with precious gems and crystals. Urelwal is, on the other hand, works with respecting nature and for caring towards natural materials, and crafting with them, of course. These materials include wood, bones, gemstones, and many other non-metallic materials. She is popular with both wizards and druids, and is one of the few elven deities who welcomes half-elves, which I am sure Milani appreciates. And that is this week's video. With this month's and next month's video, we are taking a break from the main 20 deities, which is fine since, again, with Desna coming up soon in Pathfinder, I cannot finish them until, well, Desna actually sounds like a good god for our 2nd anniversary. Either way, with one god's connection to firebrands, and apparently the Knights of Last Wall from the previews. Let us go next week to another nation where the fire Everbloom is held in high regards. See you then.